Hello and welcome to this video on using the new Band in a Box for Windows DAW plugin, specifically using it in Reaper. With Band in a Box 2018 for Windows, we've introduced a plugin version of Band in a Box that accesses all of the real tracks, real drums, and other content in Band in a Box, but can be used right inside your favorite DAW without having to open the actual Band in a Box application. The plugin comes free with the purchase of Band in a Box, and the plugin installs when you install the main program. In this video, we're going to have a look at the various ways you can use this amazing plugin in Reaper. If you use a different DAW, we have other videos that demonstrate it in many other DAWs, such as Pro Tools, Cakewalk, Cubase, Studio One, and many more. In this video, we'll first look at a quick and easy way to get started using the plugin. We'll also go through some of the technical aspects, such as the installation, locations of the plugin on your computer, and some settings within the plugin. Then we'll look at different ways you can use the plugin, including adding Band in a Box tracks to an existing project you're working on. And throughout the video, I'm going to try and use a variety of different Band in a Box styles, so you'll get a sense of some of the different genres, grooves, and tempos that we cover. Whether you're into jazz, rock, country, R&B, or any styles you can think of, there's something for you in Band in a Box. So what we're listening to right now are some great funk tracks playing in Reaper that we created with the plugin. Everything that you're hearing right now in Reaper was created by the Band in a Box plugin simply by typing in these chords, and you can enter any chords in any key. Then we picked this funk style and generated the tracks. I'm going to go back in time a little bit to show you just how we got these great sounding tracks. So here we are with a blank Reaper project. There aren't even any tracks or anything here yet. In order to use the plugin, you first need to create a track so that the plugin can be applied to the track, which you can do either by right-clicking in the track area or by pressing Ctrl-T. I'll now press the FX button, and I'll filter by band in, and we can see it's now narrowed the list, and we can see the VST3 plugin. There's also a VST2 option, but the VST3 option is definitely the best option to use. Note that it says mono, but that has nothing to do with the tracks we're going to be making. The drums and many of the real tracks will certainly be stereo. So this is the Band in a Box plugin. It's sizable, so I'll make it bigger. And now we have a blank chord chart. This area here is for the different instruments in the style and is currently blank because we don't have a style loaded yet. Here's where you can pick a style. Here you can set various musical elements such as the key, time signature, etc. And there's a spot for a song title and various menus we'll look at later. What we basically need to do in order to get some tracks is pick a style and enter some chords, not necessarily in that order. So I'll enter a chord progression first. I'll do it in the key of F, and I'll start entering some chords. F7 at bar 1, and I'll leave that for 4 bars. Maybe A flat 7 sus at bar 5. And B flat 7 at bar 7. I'll use a handy shortcut K8 to copy the last 8 bars. I'll also add a part marker at bar 9 to fill out the form, and that means that the drums will play a fill in the bar right before that part marker. At bar 17 I'll add a part marker as well, but I'll click a second time to make it a B part marker, which means the drums will change what they're playing at that part. And I'll enter G minor, then C minor at bar 19, G minor at bar 21 again, and then C7 at bar 23. I think that's good. I'll change some of the elements up here. I'll make the end bar 24, but I'll actually end on an F chord. And I'll change choruses to 4, so this entire thing will repeat 4 times. So now we can select a style, either by clicking in the Select a Style area, or by going to the Select menu and picking Select a Style. So here is the list of all of the Band in a Box styles available, and you can see there's over 6,000 to choose from. And in this list you can just double-click on any style to hear a sample of what it will sound like. So for example, if I filtered the list to show jazz styles, I could sample some of them. or some rock styles. Or some country styles. But I think the progression I entered would be very well suited to some funk styles, so I'll filter by that. I'll sample a variety of some funk styles. And I love this lash out style. You'll notice that in this column it shows the ideal tempo of the style, which for this one is 110 beats per minute. That does not mean you have to use it at that tempo, but if it's somewhat close to that, you'll get the best results. So I'll pick that style. So now there's a tap tempo feature in Reaper that I'll use. 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's come up with 114 beats per minute. And I'll set that in the plugin as well. When you first add the plugin, it takes the tempo from the DAW, but since we changed it in the DAW, I need to change it in the plugin as well. So now we're ready to generate the parts. And there are some custom generation options in this menu, but right now I just want all the tracks generated normally. So I'll press the top Generate button. So it's now creating the tracks. You'll notice right away there are some green squares and a blue square in this area, and those squares are empty. When the tracks are ready, those squares will be filled in. The generation does take a little bit of time, so we'll skip ahead in the video a little bit. So now it's finished, and these squares are now filled in with waveform icons, meaning they're ready to drag into the DAW. Before we do that, we can sample these tracks by pressing play up here. And we can now drag them into the DAW either individually, but I'll undo that so I can show you importing them as a group by dragging the blue icon. And now we have these tracks right in our DAW. And during playback, the chord chart also highlights the currently playing bar. In itself, a great tool if you want to record your own tracks now over top of this. You can now mix the tracks, of course, add effects or anything we like. And as with all real tracks and real drums, these are real instruments played by real musicians. These are not individually sampled notes. These are actual performances by some of the top studio musicians in the world, able to play over any chord progression in any key that you enter. This particular style has a bass part by Alex Al, one of the most sought-after bass players in LA, who played in Michael Jackson's band for over 10 years, and has also played with the likes of Stevie Wonder, Sting, and many more. And on guitar is Bob Lanzetti, baritone guitar Mark Lettieri, and drummer Spud Searight, all of whom are a major part of the New York funk and fusion scene. I'll do a few similar but quicker examples like this, with a few different styles so you can get a sense of the scope of what you can do with the Band in a Box plugin. So here I'm typing in some chords like I did before. But this time I'll pick a hard rock style. Here I'll set the tempo and generate the tracks. Now I'm dragging them in. And I've got some great hard rock tracks in my project. Here again, I'm typing in some chords. Here I'm picking a bluegrass style. Generating the tracks. Now dragging them in. And I've got some great bluegrass tracks in my project. In addition to actually typing in the chords, you can also just open actual Band-in-a-Box files, either files you've created right in the Band-in-a-Box app, or files other people have sent you, or even the demos that come with Band-in-a-Box. I'm going to open a Band-in-a-Box song file that features a country style that includes a soloist by the amazing Nashville legend Johnny Highland. So we now have the entire thing entered for us, the chord progression, key, form, etc. So I'll just generate the tracks. Now I'll drag them in. And here's a great country style with Johnny Highland soloing over the changes. Incidentally, on this one I deliberately made an error to show you an important feature in Reaper. You'll see the tempo in the DAW is different to the tempo that we generated the tracks to in the Band-in-a-Box plugin. If you've somehow made a mistake like that, it is of course easy to just change the Reaper tempo to match. However, you need to change one setting first. If I just change the tempo, it stretches the tracks to match the new tempo. This is a great feature in many cases where you'd want that to happen. Here, however, we definitely don't. We want to change the tempo while leaving the tracks intact. So I'll undo that change, and I'll highlight all of the audio events. I'll press F2 to bring up the media item properties, change the item time base to time, and now I can change the tempo without affecting the audio, and it's now lined up perfectly. I'll do the same file open thing to check out the demo for a Samba Brazil style, loading a song that features a style with the legendary Alex Acuna on drums, as well as the amazing Ramon Stagnaro on guitar. I'll generate, drag the tracks in, and here it's playing. So now we'll look a little bit at the installation, setup, and actually getting started with the plugin. The plugin works by accessing your Band-in-a-Box folder, and particularly the real tracks, real drums, and other content within the Band-in-a-Box folder. As such, the plugin is installed during the installation of Band-in-a-Box. It can also be installed with patch updates for Band-in-a-Box. In either case, during the Band-in-a-Box installation, you'll reach the part where the plugin is actually installed. For the majority of users, simply going with the defaults within the installation will be exactly what you'll want to do. Nevertheless, I'll go through the steps here and explain what's going on. Here it shows the different plugin types that are being installed. The VST 3 plugin is the one we're particularly concerned with in this video. There's also a VST 2 plugin that gets installed and an AAX version of the plugin, which is specific to Pro Tools. If you don't want to bother installing the VST 2 plugin and you don't have Pro Tools installed and don't think you will in the future, you can just deselect them. However, there's certainly no harm in just leaving them and going on with the default, and they don't take up a lot of room, so that's entirely up to you. Here it shows you exactly where on your computer the plugins will be installed. The Banana Box folder by default is CBB, but doesn't necessarily have to be. But this does need to be the location where you actually installed Banana Box earlier in the setup. If you installed Banana Box on a different drive, for example E for the first part of the setup, this would show up as E here as well. So there should be no reason why you would change this. And as for the location of the plugins, again, for Reaper we're only concerned with the VST3 plugin. VST3 plugins need to go in this location, so again, there should be no need for you to change that. And again, even if you're not using the VST2 or AAX plugins, it shows you here where they're going. This part of the installation is just related to VST2 and different locations where the VST2 plugin will be duplicated. Since we're not concerning ourselves with the VST2 plugin, this part of the installation isn't important. Again, the plugin doesn't take up a lot of space, so it's fine to leave these or remove the checkboxes, whichever you'd prefer. And that's it for the installation. Once that's installed, when you go to add a plugin, it should just automatically appear as an option in the Reaper plugin dialog, like it did at the beginning of this video, either by just looking for it in the list, or filtering, or clicking on applicable subcategories like VST3i or instruments. If you've installed it and it doesn't show up, I'll show you some of the steps you can take. For example, I've deliberately messed up my Reaper settings here so I could show you how to fix it. So right now the plugin is not showing up. So I'll go to the FX window, Options menu, and select FX Plugins Settings. That's like going to Options Preferences, but doing it that way opens the dialog directly to the plugins part of the preferences, which is quick and handy. But then I'll click on VST. Now at the top is this text box, which contains all of the locations where Reaper looks for plugins, with each location separated by a semicolon. So you can see this is one location, here's a semicolon, here's another location, etc. But during the installation we saw that the actual location of the VST3 and all VST3s is C Program Files, Common Files, VST3, and that is not in this list at all. So we could simply add it by typing or pasting in that location at the end of the list. But Auto Detect should also add it to the list. Then press Rescan. And here now is our plugin again. So because that folder location will be in that dialog by default, this shouldn't happen. But you now have a bit of insight into how Reaper looks for plugins, and hopefully you'll be equipped to address the unlikely situation of having the plugin not appear. So let's load up that plugin again and check out some of the settings within the plugin. The host is of course the DAW you're in this case Reaper. There's no reason to change this, and auto is always the best option. Clear Renders will clear all of the audio files that are currently saved in the Banana Box folder, which is C, BB, BB Plugin, Save Tracks, and then subfolders within that. This is something you need to be very careful about, and you should only use it if you're quite confident about your workflow within Reaper in general and your own knowledge of where audio files reside in your Reaper projects specifically. When you drag audio into Reaper from the plugin, Reaper is pointing to these files in this folder. So if you have, for example, worked on several different songs in different Reaper projects, and they're all actually pointing to the audio within these folders, if you delete everything here, then when you open those Reaper projects in the future, it will tell you that it cannot find the audio because you've deleted it. However, if you do what I always do when saving Reaper files, you'll have moved or copied the audio as part of the process of saving the project. So of course the benefit of using this button is that it can free up disk space. However, as I've said before, use it with caution and only if you are, as I've said, confident you're not going to cause problems. If your hard drive is big enough, it might not matter that this folder will continue to have audio added to it as the plugin is used. A handy feature in Reaper is the Project Bay. This shows you all the different audio files that the current project is referencing. And you can see there are tracks here I brought in from the plugin that are all located in the C, BB, BB Plugin, Save Tracks folder. But if I go to Save, select Move All Media into Project Directory, and save the file as Funk Pop Tune. Now we can see those files all reside there, and at least for this project, all of the files are safely in that project folder. One thing to keep in mind though is if you now use the plugin again to add more tracks, and here I'm adding an individual reel track, a sax solo, and I'm dragging it in, the new track is now referencing the BB plugin folder. But right in this window, you can select the tracks, or in this case the track, and copy or move to Project Media Directory. So now it is in my project folder along with all the rest of the audio in this project. So if you generally keep an eye on this window and generally keep audio in the same place as the projects, then you should be fine to use the Clear Renders button to free up space. This area is taken from the installation where we specified the Band-in-a-Box location, in our case leaving it as the default location. There's likely not a reason this would need to be changed, but if it were pointing to an incorrect folder, it would appear red like this. You could set the correct folders with these select buttons, or likely pressing Find Folders would set it correctly automatically. So earlier on we saw how we could use the plugin to create some funk tracks from scratch, but now I'm going to show you how you can use it to add tracks to something you've already recorded. So in Reaper I've got a couple of tracks recorded. The old folk song O Shenandoah, sung by the very talented Beatrix Mete. So I'd like to add some Band-in-a-Box tracks to that. One thing is that even though the Band-in-a-Box plugin isn't designed to affect audio on the track it's on, in Reaper having a plugin of this type on a track with audio does seem to increase the dB level. So it's best to just create a blank track to apply the plugin. And because I've been using the same plugin all day, I can right-click on the Effects button and pick it from Recently Used. So now you can see it's already got the correct tempo entered in, and there are 2 bars of silence at the beginning of this file, so I'll leave Lead In selected. So now I'll just start typing in the chords: C, E minor, F, C, C7. I'll skip ahead in the video until I'm done all that. So the whole thing is now typed in, and the chord chart is actually only 13 bars, but repeated 5 times. And now, just like earlier, we can pick a style. And as we saw before, there are over 6,000 to choose from, so we'll filter to find what we want. Our song is 87 beats per minute, so I'll filter by a close tempo, 85. And it's even eighths, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, so I'll filter by that. And I know there are some really cool new Americana styles, so I'll just type in Americana in the text filter as well. And I'll try a few of these out. And I really like this one, and it was recorded at 70 beats per minute, so not too far from 87, so I'll try that one. So now I can just generate the part. Again, we'll skip ahead a little bit in the video. So now the icons have changed, which means these are ready. We'll drag them all at once. And let's give that a listen. And it sounds great. I'll remove that original scratch guitar as it now doesn't really fit, but these tracks fit beautifully with the vocals. And I'll solo a few of them so you can hear them in detail. So now I want to start adding some more tracks to this. For example, this empty space here could use something, maybe a solo. Incidentally, when you click on the Effects button, you see the plugin right in the Effects dialog. But if you want to have it just as a floating window, just double-click on the plugin name. So in this file, it's just these bars that I want to generate, which is those 4 bars of instrumental break between verses. So if I was actually recording someone doing a guitar solo over this section, I might get them to do several passes and then I could pick the best one, or even comp together a part taking elements of the different takes. And with this plugin, we can emulate exactly that with the multi-riff feature. Now this is the Real Tracks picker, distinct from the style picker we saw earlier, in that this is for picking individual instruments rather than full band combos, which are the styles. Now, I know there are some great new Brent Mason acoustic guitar soloists, so that might be perfect for this. So I'll use a filter to just show real tracks recorded by Brent Mason, and I'll add another filter to only show soloists. And I'll also add a text filter, acoustic. And this one is even eighths at 65, so that could stretch up to 85, so I'll double click to sample what it sounds like. And I'll pick that one. So it's now the same real track in 7 different slots, which is what the multi-riff does. Now these 4 bars are highlighted, but it's actually going to generate a bar before and a bar after as well. The reason for this is that there's often a pickup leading into a bar, particularly with soloists, and this ensures that that won't be cut off. And the same goes with the last bar. We don't want to cut off a phrase that is trailed off past the bar line. So now under Generate, I'll go Custom and generate all riffs in the multi-riff area. And I'll skip ahead in the video again. So those are done now, and like before, I can grab the blue icon and drag that into the DAW. And now I'll close the plugin and check out the parts. So I'll mute all except the top one to start. So pretty happy already with the first one. Second one, a little too bluesy for what I want here, plus I like that the first one started earlier. The third one is nice. I like that ending that it trails off a bit more before the vocals are back in. So without even continuing on, my choice probably would be to keep the first take up to the last bar and then move over that portion from the third take. So we'll listen to that. And I'd say, yeah, I'll keep that. And now I might want to make this a bit more modern sounding. There are other options besides real tracks and real drums, such as user tracks, which are like real tracks but are able to be created by you, the user. And loops are also an option, so I think maybe I'll add a loop to this. Maybe I'll filter the list and see if I can find a hip-hop loop that might fit. I can sample them by double-clicking on them. It should be close to our tempo of 87, so anything within 20 beats per minute on either side of that might work. And this one is kind of cool in that it kind of reverses the beat every other bar, so I'll try that one. So now we can see in the tracks area, there are three distinct sections. The style tracks, which are the reel tracks specifically designated by that Old Bones style we picked earlier. Then in the middle section is the special tracks, that is any individual reel tracks, user tracks, reel drums, loops, etc. that we wanted to add. And the third and final section is the multi-riff area, which we used previously. So under the Generate button, we can see all of those three sections, and we can see we have the ability to generate all of the style tracks, or individual style tracks, all of the multi-riffs, all of the special tracks, or individual special tracks. We now have one special track, that loop we added, so I'll generate that. I'll create a new blank track and drag the special track to that blank track. And now we have this cool hip-hop loop added to the mix. Another thing I can show you is that you can actually save this as a Band in a Box song as well. We saw earlier how I opened a Band in a Box song to generate some samba tracks. Well, here I'll add a title, Oh Shenandoah, and I'll save it with that name. And now if I'm actually working in the Band in a Box app itself, I can open that file I created in the plugin. So that was using the plugin to something that was recorded to a click track, but it's even possible to use the plugin to add tracks to something that wasn't even recorded to a click. This is a little bit more advanced, but still not terribly difficult. So right now I have a track that a friend emailed to me, Buckley's Fancy Reel, played on a tin whistle. Now, I believe he just recorded this into his phone. There was no click or anything. I've just added a bit of reverb to make it sound a little fuller. So I'm going to just use the tap tempo feature in Reaper to determine the tempo. But before that, like earlier in the video, I'll set the time base to time so that it doesn't actually modify the audio when the tempo is changed. I'll listen a little again. And I'll tap that in. 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's come up with 108 beats per minute. That might not be exactly right, but for what I'll be doing here, it's certainly close enough. I'll insert a new track and add the plugin to it. It's in the key of G, and I'll type in the chords. So these are some chords that will work well with this tune. In Celtic music, there are often lots of variations on progressions that work well. He's playing it in the key of G, so I just picked some simple chords that will work with that melody. Now I'll pick a style. The type of tune he's playing is a Celtic reel, so I can filter by that to see the different reels available to me. And this Carlo one looks like it'll be great. It's got Celtic chopping cello, which is a great new style, as well as dadgad tuning guitar. I'll generate the tracks and drag them in. Now, it's certainly not going to line up perfectly yet. As I said before, this part was not recorded to a click, and my tap tempo was only a rough idea. I can move the whistle part so it at least starts at the same place, but if I play it now, it's not going to be in sync. So clearly not. But I can now do some quick work in Reaper that will make it line up. There are two options. I can edit the whistle to make it line up to the tracks, or I can edit the tracks to make them line up to the whistle. Either would be a good option, but I'll edit the whistle part to make it line up to the tracks. One thing before I start is, for the editing I'm going to do, I want to make sure when I split items, I don't want them to automatically fade in and out. So in the preferences, media item defaults, I don't want to create automatic fade-ins, etc. Now I'm going to solo the whistle to listen to it by itself. And I can clearly see the first bar starts here and ends here. So I'll put the cursor at the start of the bar for the whistle and type S to split that media item, and the same thing at the end of his bar. If I now hold the Alt key down and move my mouse over one of the split points at the start of the bar, it shows this icon with two hands, which lets me grab that point and move it, stretching the events on either side of it, so I can line it up exactly to the grid. And I can do the same thing with the end of the bar. And you'll notice that when I do that, it shows a different value for rate for each new segment. In dragging those split points left and right, I'm really adjusting the rate at which each segment is played. And that's sounding pretty close, but I can fine-tune it in the middle of the bar as well. And I'll move to the next bar. And actually, the tap tempo I did at the beginning was actually pretty accurate, because at least at this point I don't need to do too much editing, but I can still fine-tune it. I'll continue along doing the same thing throughout. So I skipped ahead a little bit in the video, and I'm just finishing up the last little bit. I can tighten up this spot, and here at beat 2, here at bar 18, and this last note played. When you do this type of editing, sometimes at split points you can sometimes get a little click or pop. So as a final step, I generally like to select all of the regions and zoom into one of the split points and create a small crossfade there, which creates a crossfade at all of the split points since they were highlighted, eliminating any possible clicks. And let's have a listen from the top. Incidentally, after recording this scratch recording for me, the whistle player then went on to re-record this tune and 17 other tunes along with the Banana Box tracks, which was released with Banana Box 2018 as Artist Performance Set 9, Celtic Flute with Jeff Kelly. And there are even more exciting features that I haven't even gotten into in this video, such as generating MIDI, which includes MIDI styles, MIDI soloists, and MIDI super tracks. So you can start to see the possibilities with this amazing plugin. Thanks very much for watching and have fun!